What's cracking there, buddy? Welcome back to the channel. New video. So there's been a few requests lately for another Fresno Bulldogs story. I don't have many stories with the Bulldogs. I did do time with Bulldogs in B yard in New Folsom, and as well as B facility in Pelican Bay. I think I've done several videos on them. You guys can go and go back and look. There's a few different Bulldog stories I did. And, you know, it's a trip. I always trip out. It seems like when it comes to prison in California, it honestly feels like there's two topics that are kind of like fascinating to a lot of people, especially people outside of California. Those two topics are Pelican Bay and the Fresno Bulldogs. And I kind of get the fascination when it comes, well, obviously the Pelican Bay one. We know what that fascination is. It's the shoe. It's all the legends that were housed there for decades. As far as the Vatos from Fresno, the Fresno Bulldogs, I get it because people hear how regimented and divided California prisons are, and you have these two big groups, the Raza from Northern California, the Raza from Southern California, and then you have this one group, and that one group has decided that they're going to take on the bullies. You know, they were going to do their own thing and go against the world. And that's fascinating to people. I get it. So today is going to be a story. I may have touched on this before. I know for a fact I've touched on it a little bit in a video. I don't know how in depth I went. I don't remember. It's been years. So because it's been years, a lot of people haven't seen it, and I'm going to discuss it today. This video has to do with how the Fresno Bulldogs wound up on B facility and how come it was a peaceful integration. Now, I want to make sure I clarify a term because every time I have used this term, people try to correct me. Funniest thing ever. So the term is red light. I don't understand why people don't get what red light means, especially when I'm using it in a sentence that clearly defines the term. It's just like driving in traffic. When the light is green, you go. When the light is red, you don't. There was a red light placed on the Fresno Bulldogs by the legends that the Raza from Southern California are under. It was basically said, listen, these two groups, because Fresno had broke off, they were going to do their own thing. And it was basically said, hey, let them tear each other up. Let's see how this plays out. But there was also that idea, that thought that, all of us on the yards with the Vatos from Fresno, we knew it wasn't going to happen, but the legends were going to try to do what they, wanted to do in regards to this. But there was that thing where, hey, let's see if we don't wind up with Fresno. That's their, when I say we, they're thinking, not me. I was never on that level, right? So it was, maybe, as they're going at it, they'll fall under the same umbrella as the Raza from Southern California. So there was a red light, and it was also if the Bulldogs are outnumbered, there's one, like we were told, in the day room, like, hey, because they would come to our day room and this and that, our tables, and it was said, like, if they try to jump on them like 4 or 5 dudes, help them. Don't let them go out like that. Help them. So it was a weird thing that was going on. Now, prior to these dudes hitting the yard, a B facility in New Folsom, they had been on C facility in New Folsom. And I've talked before in a couple videos back. The video about is Northern Raza more militant than Southern Raza. I talked about how C facility in New Folsom was a stronghold for the Raza from Northern California. That was pretty much, that was their yard. Like statewide, everybody knew that's their yard, right? And the vatos from Fresno were there. And one day, the Raza from Northern California made the decision. They didn't want them there no more, and they moved on them. And you guys, if you've seen the other videos I've done on Fresno, I mentioned the vato named Frown. Shout out to Frown from Fresno Bulldogs. They jumped on him and some other people. And what the administration did is they moved all of them off of C facility into Ad Seg. And then the California Department of Corrections was in a bind. Where do they put those guys? What do they do with them? Now, on B facility in New Folsom, there was an older gentleman from Fresno. Now, people got to understand, there were guys that were from Fresno that had been in prison for 20, 30 years. They had been in prison before there was such a thing as a bulldog from Fresno. These vatos were just from Fresno. One of those gentlemen was there on B facility with us. He had been involved in some stuff back in the days in San Quentin, Old Folsom. I don't want to put his business out there, but he had been involved in some serious shit against the legends that the Northern Raza function under. And because of that, he had garnered a shitload of respect from the other legends. And it was well known, hey, that OG right there is from Fresno. If he needs anything, look out for him. Don't fuck with him. So, I happen to be right there, standing right by the vato who had the llaves at the time, the shot caller, llavero, whatever you want to call it. Back then, it was still, that system was in place. And he approached, the OG from Fresno approached him and said, hey, can I ask you for a favor, man? I want to talk to you real quick. He's like, yeah, what's going on? And he ran him down. Look at my little homies, you know, all these little dudes from Fresno. They were on C Yard. You know, you guys probably know already. The vatos from up north rushed them. They, you know, did whatever they did. They're all in the oil. They have nowhere to go, eh? They have nowhere to go. And I wanted to ask you if it could be cleared to where they come out here to this yard. And he said, and you have my word that if they fuck up once, he said, I will kill the first one myself. It was clear, it got cleared, and he was told, hey, do what you got to do. And so that right there, I know the man's name. I don't want to say his name. But that's how respected this man was. He wasn't a Southerner. He wasn't a Bulldog. He was an OG who had earned the type of respect to where when he asked for a blessing, the legend said, give it to him. Because when he said, if they do anything out of line, he would kill the first one, there was no doubt about it. He had already killed before. He had a proven record, and it was respected. So that's when Fresno Bulldogs started being released. Boom, they brought them all out. Now, for a lot of the youngsters from down south, they knew, okay, red light. But, you know, it was one of those things where initially it was like, are they really coming out here to do their thing or to like do their thing, right? So everybody stay ready, but treat them with respect. Pose no threat to them. Because there were Northerners on B facility. So it was one of those things where it was like, okay, how does this pan out? Do they come out here and retaliate on these Vatos for what happened to them over there. Let's see how it plays out. And it was a trip. Everything was done gradually. So when they first hit the yard, they didn't have a spot. They didn't have an area. I remember they would come out and they would go down to the backstop. Those of you that have been on B Yard in New Folsom, you know what I'm talking about. It's closer to the Southerners area. Backstop right there. They wound up later cutting the grass, making a track on the grass. The small track. You had the big track, and then you had the small track. This was before they cut the small track on the grass. And so they would meet down there. Yard would get released, and they would all meet there, and they would have to decide, like, hey, where do you guys want to hang out? Because in California prisons, every group has their table, their basketball court, their pull-up bars that they won through warfare. Nobody gets a free ride. Everything's already established. Dudes that have earned whatever they earned are going to keep that. So I remember it was probably about a week later. No, before I don't want to skip this. No, it might have been about a week. I think it could have been about a week, maybe 2 weeks they were out there. Basically, what the raza, the leadership, the raza from Southern California wanted to see is, how do they go about getting an area that they want, right? So these Vatos would come out, but when they were coming out, hey, where we gonna hang out? Hey, where we gonna kick it? They were also assessing the layout. They were looking at, okay, what do we want to take so that we have our own spot on this yard? Because they can't be like that. They can't be like, listen, I don't care what group it is. Everyone has their spot. You can't be that group that's just floating around, right? And I give them credit. I don't know if they knew, but they picked a spot. And so they pushed up on the Bloods. Like, they wanted their handball court. And on B Yard, and people argue with me that I'm full of shit. Like, I don't know where you've been. They called the handball court Blood Alley. And people, no, that was Old Folsom. Yeah, there was a Blood Alley in Old Folsom. The handball court, and right between 8 Block and Work Change, the laundry door was right there too for the laundry room. They called that Blood Alley. That's where that 2-letter blood organization hung out. Fucking Buddha. That was like the tightest crew out of all the blacks right there in New Folsom beef facility on that yard that time. Them dudes right there, them Bloods were like, out of all the black, they were the ones where everybody knew, like, they do what they want. I seen them hitting dudes with, like, I seen them hit a Crip without retaliation. I mean, they were, now the Crip was, I think, a San Jose Crip, so maybe that's why things didn't jump, but they were with it. And the Bulldogs decided they were going to push up on them. They wanted their handball court, but the raza from Southern California, the Llavero himself, that's all he wanted to see, that these Vatos were really coming out here and they were really willing to fight for land. And the Llavero called him over. The main dude was a dude from the east side. I don't want to say the main dude, but the guy that everybody kind of like the Southerners decided, hey, you're the one we're going to talk to, was from the east side, Fresno. And he told him, hey, Holmes, are you Vatos planning on trying to get that lower handball court? And they were like, yeah, Holmes, that's the spot we picked. And the Llavero was like, we can't let you do that. Because if you Vatos get into it with them, we're going to jump in. And we don't need to fuck business off here. So this is what we're going to do. And that's when they got their area. The raza from Southern California gave the Fresno Bulldogs half of their basketball court. Told them the handball court's right there where the whites and Southerners were at. you guys are invited over there as well. And told them 6 block, the concrete yard, that whole wall right there. He said, that's yours too. All that had belonged to the Southerners. But they told him, that's yours too. Defend your area. And I remember the main thing that was stressed was this. Whatever you do, do not let the blacks move up and try to mingle in your spot, because that's a security violation for us. That's too close. They have all the bottom of the yard. They don't need to be on the upper yard. So that was the agreement. That is how the Fresno Bulldogs made it onto B facility in New Folsom, which, as I mentioned before, that was the yard where pretty much the most, in New Folsom, the most serious hitters were on that yard. And, you know, Raza from Northern California would be like, hell no, we were over there on CR. And you were. There were also Raza from Northern California on B facility. And later, you know, things happened. And, you know, I mentioned before where a dude from Modesto who had whacked a Southerner in Mill Creek came to B yard in New Folsom and was bragging about it, was overheard, and he got moved on. The Northerners said they weren't tripping, and then got caught like a day or two later moving 6 knives. One dude from up north, I don't remember where he's from. His name was Jesse. He was on the yard crew, got caught moving 6 knives. And then that's when the Raza from Northern California, Southern California, the Llavero, because everybody was riled up. There was obviously a threat now. A Northerner had been touched. They got caught moving pieces. It was basically known where in the next week or two it's going to be guerra. The South and the North are going to have to get off over this dude running his mouth about hitting a Southerner, and then he got whacked on the yard. The Northerners were going to put up with it. And then other people were like, well, wait a minute. What's going on with the Bulldogs? Like, we're not supposed to touch Northerners or Bulldogs. This had to be done because the Vato disrespected and was saying Southerners are a bunch of brides. I whacked one, he screamed. He got overheard saying some really crazy shit, so that had to happen. But Vatos were telling the Llavero, like, hey, Holmes, I thought the fucking Bulldogs and Northerners were at war. Why are we about to go at it with these Vatos when these Vatos are at war? Had their issue over there and no run back. And I would say there was probably 20, maybe 30 Vatos from Northern California on B facility at the time. There was probably about 35 dudes from Fresno at the time. And the Llavero called over that dude from Eastside Fresno. Was like, hey, Holmes, check this out. You know, we got this thing building up over here with these cats. And we don't have a problem going at it with them. But where you guys at? Like, you Vatos fucking, you know, this whole shit here. This, you know, I don't want to get into the verbiage, right? But basically it was like, you know, you Vatos got free land. You Vatos got a free pass to come. And those are your enemigos. We don't have nothing against them right now. We ain't tripping on them at all. And let me tell you something, Holmes. The Bulldogs said, we got that. Don't even trip. So we're like, wow, how does this pan out? Basically, even numbers. How's this going to pan out? What's the administration going to do? You know, so it's kind of things, sit back and get your popcorn ready. The next day, them crazy ass Bulldogs. They sent 4 Bulldogs to rush 20 Northerners. Oh, Frown. That was another bad day for Frown. But Frown was always there. He was always in the mix. But that was when pretty much, I think after that, there was like a handful of Raza from Northern California stayed on the yard. And my assessment of the ones that were left behind is they weren't political in any type of way. And I remember we had heard that the Northerners had put out a filter that any northerner that went to B facility and didn't get off was no good. They had made that yard no good for them. And but that act solidified Fresno's position on B facility. And that was in 1995 when they hit B facility. And then by 1998, there was an incident pretty much at the same time frame. At the time, the Bulldogs of the Fresno Bulldogs were housed basically in 2 level 4s: B facility in Pelican Bay, B facility in New Folsom. And while I was there, I can say that there were a couple little incidents that happened, but for the most part, everything ran smooth between the two groups. But in 1998, I don't know if this was something that was planned out for all the vatos from Fresno, or if this was just a coincidence, but an incident occurred in both yards, New Folsom and Pelican Bay, 1998, which led to the CDC moving basically all Bulldogs to Salinas Valley and giving them their own yard. It was a trip. But that's my video for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. You guys been asking for a Fresno story. There it is. Everybody, please be safe, be smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them. I'm out.